go ahead here and begin recording. Good. So welcome back. We are going to be in chapter 17 of Revelation. So if you want to turn to chapter 17 of Revelation, then we'll look at that together. And while you're turning there, I'm going to try to make it to where you can see the slides there. So give me a thumbs up if you can see the title slide, and that's what's filling up your screen. Okay, good, wonderful. Just like to make sure that we're all there together. So we are in Revelation chapter 17. We went through the last of the sevenfold visions. So that was the seven angels with the seven bowls of God's wrath, the seven censer angels, okay? And so I told you that this week we would pick up with Babylon's fall and judgment, and that is certainly where we're going to pick up. So that's chapter 17. And so I'm going to read chapter 17 just kind of all at once so that we have that context, and then we're going to go back and make comment on it. Again, remember that we went through that the seven bowls of God's wrath. So that was the sevenfold vision of all the events that have to take place on earth between Christ's ascension and his second coming. Okay, fine there. And now after the end, we get this prolonged vision again of the end. And it has to do with Babylon's fall and judgment. So chapter 17, verse 1 and following. Here's how it reads. Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on earth have become drunk." And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. When I saw her, I marveled greatly, but the angel said to me, "Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with the 7 heads and 10 horns. Sorry, trying to admit a couple of people here. Okay. So again, verse 7. But the angel said to me, "Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. And the dwellers on earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world will marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come." This calls for a mind with wisdom. Sorry, I keep trying to admit people, and so then I lost my place. Verse 9, picking up with verse 9. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. They are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen. One is, the other has not yet come, and when he does come, he must remain only a little while. Verse 11. As for the beast that was and is not, it is an eighth, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction. Verse 12. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast. These are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those with him are called and chosen and faithful. Verse 15. And the angel said to me, "The waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitute. They will make her desolate and naked, and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire, for God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose by being of one mind and handing over their royal power to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman that you saw is the great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth. Okay. Whew. Well, there's a lot there. So we're going to have to pick this apart. The first thing that I'm going to say to y'all is that this woman and the beast upon which she rides in chapter 17 are sometimes dealt with separately in this chapter, like the woman is one thing and then the beast upon which she rides is another thing. But then sometimes in chapter 17, the two actually become one. Like you can't tell where one starts and stops and the other one starts and stops. And so they are treated together as one entity, and they are together known as Babylon. So Babylon is not one thing, but two altogether. Okay. I know that chapter is a little bit confusing in how it's written and put together. And I know I even stumbled, all over it when I was reading. So I apologize for that. But that's the reason why that chapter reads a little awkwardly, is because you've got this woman, the beast upon which she rides, and together they are Babylon. Okay. So she is Babylon, but also they are Babylon. Okay. It's weird and confusing. Think of it almost like an unholy duality, as opposed to the Holy Trinity or something, right? So the Son is not the Father is not the Spirit, et cetera, but they are all God, right? So here you've got this unholy duo. You've got the woman who is Babylon, who rides upon the beast, and together they are Babylon, okay? So I don't know if that makes it clearer or worse. Hopefully it makes it a little bit clearer, but we're going to talk about Babylon's fall and judgment today, okay? So Babylon's judgment is a major theme in Revelation. So as I said from the very beginning, we've already gone through the last iteration of the sevenfold vision, the events concerning what happens on earth between Christ's ascension and his second coming. And the end then has already come. We've gone through the Battle of Armageddon, we've gone through the end of the world. And now we're talking about the fall of Babylon and Babylon's judgment. So, in other words, after John has seen all the events, and after John has already seen the end of the world again, because he's seen the end of the world several times over, right? He now sees the complete judgment of Babylon. This is a major theme in the book of Revelation, because throughout Revelation, you have this invitation, this gracious invitation to get with the Lamb of God, who is Jesus Christ, before the end comes. And so when the end finally comes, now John sees this sort of long, drawn-out vision that kind of ties everything together with a nice bow. And this will last through 3 chapters. So you've got 17 that we're dealing with today. 18 we'll start to look at next week. And then in chapter 19, John sees this beautiful vision of a great celebration, the marriage feast of the Lamb, all of that good stuff. And we're going to talk about that. So there's this sort of prolonged, after the end, and John has seen the end, there is this long drawn out sort of tying everything together with a bow that has to do with the judgment of Babylon and also the marriage feast of the Lamb. Okay, so the judgment of the prostitute and then a marriage feast of the Lamb. Okay, so this is it, guys and gals. Like, we're coming to that point in Revelation where we need to make sure that we feel comfortable that we get the major themes. If you walk away from the study of Revelation and you don't feel comfortable with these major themes from chapter 17 through 19, then I've frankly failed you in trying to go through this book with you, because this is where it all kind of gets tied together with a bow. Everybody with me? Anybody have any questions? Where we're at? Okay, seeing none. I'm going to keep moving forward here. So who is this prostitute? Because I told you that sometimes she is Babylon, but then she and the beast upon which she rides together are Babylon. So who is this prostitute? Well, in old translations, she would just be the whore of Babylon. Nobody translates it as whore anymore because whore is considered a derogatory word, okay, in its usage today. But to give you an idea of the offensiveness of who she's being referred to as being, the word there that I've given you in Greek, porneis, is the word we get porn from, pornography. Okay, so we are talking about pure sexual immorality from start to finish. That's why in the older translations in English, she was referred to as the whore of Babylon, right? Because we are talking about a derogatory thing. We are talking about, not a nice way to refer to somebody, okay? So she's the prostitute. She's the harlot. She's the whore, okay? And the word for her in the Greek text is the same word that we get pornography from, okay? Now, it would be easy to say that this prostitute who is Babylon is some other group of people, right? Is, maybe like a government or an oppressive system, something like that. But here's the problem. The New Testament is a commentary on the Old Testament. So I've said this over and over and over, and I'm going to continue to say it over and over and over. If you are not familiar with your Old Testament, that is where the meat and potatoes is. You've got to go get familiar with your Old Testament, okay? Because the New Testament really is a commentary. It comments upon and helps you to go back and read your Old Testament more effectively. If you walk away from Revelation and on top of feeling like maybe you feel like you've got a handle on some of these major themes that we're discussing, you also walk away and say, hey, I think I'm going to go back and read the prophets. Pastor Will is happy because now you're going back and reading the prophets from the standpoint of the end that you've now read in Revelation, and it's going to help the prophets make that much more sense to you. But if you go back and you read your Old Testament prophets, I am talking Hosea here, okay? So if you're not familiar with Hosea, I'll spell it for you here. I'll try to in the chat feature. There you go. So I'm talking about Hosea. Okay, so there's his name. That's a book in the Old Testament. But I'm talking about Jeremiah, Isaiah, all these guys. Okay, the imagery that is being employed here in Revelation is imagery that you already have all over the prophets in spades. Okay, because over and over and over again, that last bullet point, the Old Testament prophets pictured Israel as prostituting themselves as they strayed away from the one true God to find communion with these other gods of the other nations that surrounded them. Not only were they pictured as prostituting themselves out by basically cheating on the one true God in order to also incorporate beliefs and worship practices of the other religions that surrounded them, the other deities that surrounded them there in the ancient Middle East. But a lot of these other religions were themselves fertility cults. If you are unfamiliar with what a fertility cult is, I'm going to pause here for a second. I keep readmitting people who have already been admitted. Will someone unmute your mic and tell me, like, are y'all having trouble? Like, is the system kicking you out of the session, or are you having trouble with the sound and you have to exit and then re-enter? What's going on? Just so that I know.
For me, I got kicked out one time in the beginning of the Bible
No
study.
one?
Can you hear me?
Can any of you hear me? Okay.
Anna
I don't know what's
is
going on.
answering your
All right.
pastor.
Wait, there's a chat that came in.
My phone went weird on me and I had to shut it off and
Anna
come
is
back
answering, but I can't hear Anna.
We can hear Anna.
Anna,
I can hear you.
can you
Will,
unmute your mic so that I can hear you?
it is unmuted.
Some people's phones and things have kicked them off. We can hear them, and they can hear you. Okay. Whatever. I don't know why we're having trouble with the technology today. I apologize if I've somehow missed something, and I should be doing something different as your moderator of the session today. Don't know why you can't hear her, but we can. Okay, fine. Well, we'll just keep going. If you can hear me, great. So anyway, as I was saying, these fertility cults, if you're unfamiliar with them from that time period in the Old Testament, a lot of these other religions that were surrounding ancient Israel were fertility cults, okay? And if you don't know what a fertility cult is, that would be a religion that is focused on fertility, not just, having human babies or something, but really it has to do with farming practices. So in the ancient Near East, you know that water is a premium. There are large desert areas. Crops can fail. You can have years of drought. People can starve to death, okay? So these other religions that came up in the area, they are religions that were around this idea of the fertility of the earth, basically. And so the way that it worked is called sympathetic magic. And I'll write that in the chat feature for everyone. Sympathetic magic. Yeah, it seeps into the New Testament in Corinth as well as in Ephesus. Yes, Gary, it does, and I'm going to get to that in just a second. That's where I'm actually going. But so the idea with the fertility cults is this. It works by sympathetic magic. So that means that you would go to a temple and pay to have sex with a temple prostitute, okay? And so the reason that you would have sex with a temple prostitute, and I apologize if this is hurting anyone's sensibilities because this is pretty graphic stuff I'm talking about. But I'm just trying to be honest with you about what's going on, and I'm trying to help you to understand the prophets and then also Revelation. So you would pay a temple prostitute, you'd have sex with a temple prostitute, and then the idea is that the male and female deities would watch you as a worshiper having sex with a temple prostitute, and they'd basically use it as their own pornography, like watching a pornographic video or something. And then they would feel aroused, and then they would have spiritual, celestial sex, and it would cause the rains to fall upon the earth, and it would cause the crops like wheat to grow for human consumption. I know that sounds crazy, okay? But when you're talking about ancient societies that didn't understand even farming practices from a technological standpoint or a scientific standpoint, like we would understand it today, like looking at better seeds with Monsanto or something like that. This is how they understood that the crops would grow and not fail, and then they would have some sort of input or say beyond simply putting a seed in the ground and hoping that it all turns out okay. This is a way for people to feel like they can participate in a different way and have some sort of control over the outcome. So in our own day and time, we might buy seeds from whatever developer scientific company like a Monsanto or something with like the insecticide or the antifungal coating already on the seed, right? And it goes into the ground, and you say, well, I had some control over my crops because I bought the better seed, right? Or I had some control over my crops because I bought the better tractor, right? If somebody tells you that this is how farming practices work, you listen to them, because that's who we listen to today, is someone saying, well, this is how farming practices work. This is how you get the better yield. That's what these religions were centered on in the ancient Near East, that God was telling the people of Israel, listen, when you come into the land, you got to wipe all these people out, because if you don't, you're going to adopt their religion. And when you just read it on the face of it in the Old Testament, sometimes I think Christians, it can kind of goes over our head because we don't know that whole cultural background. And we think to ourselves, well, God just said in this case he wanted to see genocide happen in the area. That's kind of crazy. So that's its whole problematic thing. And then the other thing that happens when we read these texts in the Old Testament is we go, well, why does God say that they're going to adopt these other religions? I mean, he's God. They know it. Why in the world would they just simply adopt these other religions? What is the deal about these other religions? Well, when you've been slaves in Egypt, which is a fertile place, and you start out in Goshen, which is the Nile Delta, so that's a really fertile place, and then you come to the ancient Near East, it's still a place where you can grow crops, but it's a lot more persnickety, right? It's a lot more fickle, all right, in the area and the climate and the soil and all that. And then the people in the area who are already living there tell you this is the farming practice. This is how you get the crops to go. You go to that temple, you pay to have sex with a temple prostitute, and then the crops will grow. What are you going to do? If somebody tells you, here's the latest, greatest tractor, here's the latest, greatest seed, what are you going to do? You're going to buy it, okay? God knew that they were going to adopt these other religions, not simply because of a spiritual thing or something like that, but because everybody's got to eat. And if they tell you this is the farming practices, you're going to adopt it. Because these fertility cults involve paying a temple prostitute, it was easy for the Old Testament prophets to pick up on that imagery and then say to the people of Israel that not only with your body, but spiritually, you're basically whoring yourselves out to other deities by walking away from the one true God. You want to know how the crops really grow, the prophets said? The prophets will tell you the crops really grow because God, who's the creator of the universe, causes the increase. You need to pray to Yahweh and stop going and paying the temple prostitute. But you want to pay the temple prostitute because A, they told you it was the farming practices that work, and B, you want to pay the temple prostitute because let's face it, guys are not, it's not a hard sell for guys to tell them that, hey, here's a religion that means you get to sleep with prostitutes outside of your marriage, and it's supposedly for your family. Like, I'm doing this for the family because the crops will grow. That's how messed up this whole thing had gotten in the ancient Near East, and it's why God warned the people about these religions, and it's why the prophets can pick up on that imagery and then say that the people of Israel had gone prostituting themselves out to other deities. Now, I know that Joel has a question. I'd like to hear that question or comment. And I want to know if anyone else has got any questions or comments, or if all this is clear as mud so far. Go ahead, Joel. I don't know if I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Pastor?
So
Yes.
I see that you're talking, but I can't hear you. So hopefully everyone else can hear you.
How about now, Pastor? Can you hear me now? I'll type it.
Yep, they can hear you, Joel. So keep going.
Okay, so really this comes down to me understanding or me hearing that, all this is one big perversion, and it's against what God would have us do and be and say and worship. And I guess my kids are young, so I'll make it quick. But yeah, even the prostitute, my Bible notes were talking about the prostitute being a counterpart to the righteous woman in chapter 12. And even evil doesn't have its own value. It's simply the perversion of good. So I don't know if Pastor heard that, but I'm done. And hello to everyone else.
Okay. Joel, I am not joking because of you. I'm joking because of me. I'm sure that whatever you said was awesome and astute, and everyone benefited. But I couldn't hear you, and I just realized why. I had my computer muted. So I have advanced degrees, everyone, just so that you know. Yeah, I can't tie my own shoes. So I had my.
That's good to know, Pastor.
Yeah, so, okay. So good. So we're going to keep moving forward unless there are other questions, comments, or problems so far. Does everybody get where we're going here with this imagery in Revelation and how it ties into the Old Testament? Yes, Joel, evil is only the perversion of good. Very good. That's also a C.S. Lewis ism, and it is very much going to be true here as we continue through this chapter and how we contrast and compare two women coming up in just a moment. Okay, so great. The counterpart of the prostitute in chapter 12. Yeah, actually, that's where we're going. So I love that you went there, Joel. Yep, that's it. Okay. Got one more chat here. And that's how Satan works. Yeah, guy had never had an original thought in his life. He's the Milli Vanilli of the universe. Good. So we're going to keep going then. I want to remind you the two beasts that we're talking about. Okay. Wait. So again, if in the Old Testament the people of God were actually the ones prostituting themselves out after other deities, that means that this prostitute is made up of people who claim true religion. Okay, because the people of Israel claim true religion and then prostituted themselves out to other, deities. Okay, so whoever this prostitute is, it has to do with religion, and it has to do with false religion. Okay, so we're going to keep going. I want to remind you the two beasts that we've been talking about this whole time, because she's riding upon a beast. She's riding upon the beast that is the beast from the sea that we talked about in an earlier chapter. That's the political beast, okay? Oppressive government, oppressive education, all these systems that people use to have power over one another. We summed all that up by saying the political beast. It's the beast that arises from the sea. Yes, Jennifer, absolutely, like Hosea and his wife. That's why I commended you to read Hosea in the Old Testament. Absolutely, okay? But I want to remind you of the two beasts we've been looking at in Revelation, the beast from the sea, which is a political beast, and the beast from the earth, which we said was the religious beast. Now, in Revelation, the beast from the sea never changes form. The beast from the sea, with the 7 heads and the 10 horns and all that, is always the same beast. It always appears the same way. This political beast is always the same in the book of Revelation. The second beast, the beast from the earth, the religious beast, changes form on you 3 times. The first time you see the religious beast, it arises from the earth, and it has horns like a lamb, but it speaks like a dragon. Okay? The second time you see the political beast, it has taken the form of the false prophet who props up world government systems and all of these other oppressive systems, right? Which is the beast from the sea. Now, this is the 3rd time you're seeing the religious beast. And as I told you, the people of Israel who went prostituting themselves out to other deities are seen as doing that in the Old Testament. So this whore of Babylon, this prostitute, this harlot, is actually the religious beast who's changed form a 3rd time. And now the religious beast appears to you as this prostitute. She's riding on the beast because in everything that we've seen between these two beasts, they prop each other up. The corrupt, oppressive state and education and all these, human political systems prop up false religion. And in turn, false religion keeps telling everybody to worship the beast, thereby propping up the oppressive systems of government, education, whatever you want to call it. It's the political beast. So in this instance, the state, the political beast, whatever, is the vehicle upon which this religious beast, this false religion, is actually riding. Okay? So all throughout these chapters of Revelation, you've seen these two beasts prop each other up at different moments. This is now the 3rd time you're seeing the religious beast. The religious beast appears as a beautiful, attractive prostitute who is now being propped up by the political beast. Okay? Everybody with me? So you see that beast 3 times. The first time, it looks like a lamb but talks like a dragon. The second time, it is the false prophet, like Antichrist, right? And then the 3rd time, it's a prostitute. Okay? A beautiful, attractive prostitute. So Well, I made a slide for that. So again, the beast from the earth is the prostitute who is also Babylon. Okay? They're the same. They've just, the things changed form on you 3 times. I think this is actually pretty appropriate because spirituality can do that on you. It can shift, it can change forms, but it's the same old thing, right? Government kind of always looks like government. Like it doesn't, I mean, you know government when you see it, right? You know laws when you see them. So that the beast from the sea, that political beast doesn't change. Spirituality looks like it shifts. It looks like it changes form, but in the end of the day, it's still the same old false religion. Okay. We shouldn't put our faith in government to do God's work. Yeah, no, we really shouldn't. There are 2 kingdoms, the kingdom of the right and the kingdom of the left. I'll probably go into that more in depth some other time, but Kim and Paul, whoever wrote that, I'm taking it that y'all are kind of there together. But yeah, we shouldn't put our faith in government to do God's work. But it is from the standpoint of Revelation imperative to remember that although we as Christians confess that God has given authority to government for a reason, in order to curb wanton lawlessness, which frankly, lately, our government has been incapable of stopping wanton lawlessness in certain parts of our country right now. I know that people have said what they've said about these protests, and I understand protesting, and I understand they have even a constitutional right to peacefully assemble and protest. But guys and gals, some of the stuff we're seeing, the 7th commandment is still the 7th commandment. You know, thou shalt not steal. Okay. So this wanton lawlessness, rioting, destruction of property, theft, murders that have taken place, the 5th commandment is still the 5th commandment, thou shalt not murder. Those commandments didn't go away. And so we confess as Christians that God has given authority to government to curb wanton lawlessness. So our government in certain parts of the country right now, whether you're talking about federal or local, is proving lately to be very ineffective, because they have authority from the divine for one reason, to curb excess lawlessness. And they're doing a poor job of it lately, okay? But even though we confess that God has given authority to the government for that reason, God has not given authority to the government that is divine in and of itself. So whether you're talking about at the time of the writing of Revelation, who was the big government? It would have been the Roman Empire. They had a cult of emperors. People literally worshipped the emperors as deities. And this is not the first time we've seen that, right? So when you talk about false religion propping up the state, false religion in Rome, which is not the worship of the one true God, propped up the state by telling people to worship their emperors. That's not the first time that's happened. It also happened in ancient Egypt, and the people of Israel saw it, because they worshipped, the Egyptians worshipped Pharaoh as God, right? It happened over here in the Americas. When you're talking about the Mayans and the Aztecs and the Incas, right? We talk about the Incans, but really it's the Incas, because that's just what they called their emperors. They were considered deities walking around on earth, okay? So false religion worldwide has often propped up the state by telling people to worship the state in some way. And we should never do that as Christians. That is bad religion, man. I mean, that's the theological word for it. Yeah, it has something to do with the history of pop music in the United States, but I'm talking about bad religion. Seriously, that's bad religion, and you don't want to get involved in that. But also, the state will often prop up false religion, because the state loves false religion if that false religion is going to then turn around and prop up the state. A great example of this would be Hitler's Germany, right? We've talked about that in this study together. Hitler actually had a minister of religion who studied the occult and then worked those ideas into Roman Catholic and Lutheran pulpits throughout Germany, leading up to his rise in power and formed this cult of personality around the emperor. We want to respect our presidents. We want to pray for our presidents, whether we wanted them elected or we voted for the other person. But what we want to be careful not to do is get involved in a cult of personality around a president. That's very, very dangerous. And again, it's bad religion, right? Presidents would love for the church to prop them up in a cult of personality because it helps legitimize what they're doing. But as the true worshipers of Jesus Christ, we want to pray for our presidents. We want to pray for our mayors, our governors, all of our leaders. We want to pray for them. We want to support them. We want to speak truth to power where we need to, right? And but we don't want to get involved in a cult of personality or the worship of our leaders or of the state itself, okay? So when we talk about being proud to be Americans, for example, right? Same thing. Here we are coming into 4th of July. We want to be patriotic Americans. Patriotic Americans participate in their form of government, which is representative, or it's supposed to be, okay? So that means that you can get involved in local politics, national politics. If you want to join a political party, you can join them. You can vote. You can go to town hall meetings. You can go to city council meetings. You can voice your opinions. You would want to participate in your form of government. What we don't do is worship our nation or worship our flag or even worship our Constitution because that's false religion, okay? So hopefully that helps what we're talking about here. We're talking about two beasts and they prop each other up, and this beast of the earth, this spirituality, looks like it keeps changing forms in Revelation 3 times, but it's really the same old bad religion. It's false religion. And ultimately, for the Christian, because this book was written for Christians, it's false Christianity, people, okay? This prostitute represents everything that is false Christianity. What's she got in her hand? She's got there, you've got it on your screen there, she's got the cup of all of her immoralities. False religion ends up telling people that their immorality is actually okay and even to be encouraged. Just going to let that sink in for a minute. False religion tells people that their immoralities are okay and even to be encouraged. I'm going to let you fill in the blank whether or not that's happening in false Christianity in America today. Because it's not hard to fill in that blank.
If you look at that picture, Pastor, it looks like she's saying, "Come follow me," with her hand.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Harlan. That's the idea, is that false religion is attractive. False religion is attractive. False religion, I mean, she's wearing jewels and she's wearing clothing that looks expensive. False religion always looks good, you know? It's not that people don't follow false religion because it looks bad. They follow false religion because it looks good. Okay? I got a chat that came in here. Like churches accepting homosexuality as normal. Yeah. I mean, this stuff isn't hard, guys. And the problem is they're going to call us bigots for saying stuff like that. But it's not hard. It's a hard truth because people don't want to hear it. Okay? But it's not hard. Intellectually, it's not hard. It's hard 6 inches south in people's hearts because they don't want to hear it. And what does false religion say? False religion says, just keep doing what you're doing. In fact, I'm going to encourage you in your immorality because it's all a form of spirituality. No, it's not. No, it's not. Okay? So that's where we're at with false religion and the prostitute, okay? Going back to what Joel was already getting to ahead of time. Joel, you're a scholar and a gentleman. You're way ahead of your time, okay? We're going to hold up 2 women of Revelation, one from chapter 12 and 14. No, excuse me, 12. One from chapter 12 and one here in chapter 17. So the woman that we said is Mary, and then by extension we said can represent the true church, is one woman. From heaven's perspective, she is clothed with the sun. has the stars above her head as a crown and the moon under her feet. Okay? But from Earth's perspective, what happens to her? She has to flee out to the wilderness where God has to take care of her himself, or she won't even eat. And the dragon, who's not involved in this chapter directly yet, only his two puppets, the political beast and the religious beast, right, who are the puppets that serve the will of the dragon, who is the devil. The dragon is hunting the woman. The dragon is hunting her offspring. So again, you and me as members of Christ's church, right? This woman from heaven's perspective is like celestial royalty, but from earth's perspective is rejected and despised. Okay? She's impoverished. She's living out in the desert. The true church of Jesus Christ in this world is going through a similar experience as, again, if we talk about it as a tribulation, as Israel in the wilderness for 40 years, Jesus in the wilderness for 40 days. This is a time of wilderness wandering where only God himself can provide for us or we won't make it. Okay? Every single day, God has to provide for us or we won't make it. This is a wilderness wandering time for you and for me, and yet from a certain perspective, it is also a wilderness being led by God time, because it is God who leads his people in the desert for 40 years. It is the Spirit who leads Jesus out into the wilderness for 40 days, right? And God still provides for you and me in this time of tribulation. So again, it's funny, from heaven's perspective, the true church of Jesus Christ is like celestial royalty, pictured as this woman, first of all, Mary, but by extension, the church. But from earth's perspective, this woman is seen, and all of her offspring, so the church of Jesus Christ, is seen as despised and impoverished and living out in this wilderness wandering. The prostitute, from earth's perspective, is attractive and desirable, but from heaven's perspective, is a prostitute, and she's going to fall under judgment. Okay? You cannot see in order to believe. You have to believe in order to see. Because what things look like from an earthly perspective through the eyes of sinners looks one way, but from heaven's perspective looks a completely different way. Okay? So these two women are held up. And from chapter 12 to chapter 17, we can see this juxtaposition. The contrast couldn't be clearer, okay? This also helps us make more sense out of chapter 14. This is where I was trying to go with chapter 14. The 144,000 who appear for the second time in chapter 14 that we read, who are considered to be male virgins. These 144,000 considered to be male virgins are the elect of God. They represent the full number of the true church of Jesus Christ, the true followers of Jesus. 144 is simply a number of full completion exponentially, okay? So it's the full number of the true believers in Jesus Christ. Why are they pictured as male virgins? Well, they're pictured as male virgins because they have not committed adultery or fornication with the prostitute of false religion. Get it? So hopefully that helps to make that imagery a lot clearer. Why these 144,000 would be pictured as male virgins. They're simply pictured as male virgins because they are the full number of people who believe in Jesus and who have not committed this adultery or fornication with false religion, false Christianity, okay? So hopefully that helps. Any questions or problems so far? I actually have my computer unmuted, so I'd be able to hear you this time because I'm brilliant. No? Okay. hopefully that means that the silence means that this is clear and helpful to you. I want to say a couple of things about verse, I don't know, 7 and following, the end of 6 and then into 7 and following. When I saw her, that is the prostitute, seated upon the beast, I marveled greatly. But the angel said to me, why do you marvel? I'll tell you the mystery of the woman. Now, what's mystery mean? Mystery means that it has to be revealed, okay? It's a secret, but it can become an open secret, okay? So we say that the cross is a mystery. An innocent man dies, and you and I who are guilty find freedom in Jesus, right? That's a mystery. It's something that was counterintuitive. No one would have ever known this. It had to be revealed to us, right? But it has become an open secret. It's not like people can't find out about, what this mystery is of the cross and empty tomb of Jesus Christ. They could hear it preached on the radio, TV, internet. They can go to a church. It's an open secret, okay? If you don't get the secret, it's your own fault, because it's not like a secretive society, okay? It's an open secret. So this is also a mystery. This image, this picture of this prostitute, Babylon, riding upon the beast in the desert. And so the angel says, well, why do you marvel? I'll tell you what the mystery is. I'll unwrap it for you, okay? Verse 8, the beast that you saw was and is not and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. So it's, at the time, the political beast would have been the Roman Empire. I mean, that's just too easy and clear for the Christians under persecution from Rome at the time. But the beast was, so former empires, is not. Rome fell, Babylon fell, Egypt didn't go away, but Egypt fell as an empire. America's here today. There'll come a time when America's gone, at least not as the power it is today, as the empire it is today. America will change in the future, because that's the way it is with empires, okay? It's nothing. I know I love this country. I know you love this country too, but we need to remember that we are first and foremost citizens of heaven. And we need to remember that first and foremost, all empires rise and fall. So it was, then it was not, and then it is to come. There'll also be a new empire, right? That rises up after the old, okay? So this political beast won't go away, right? And that's why the angel says, whose names are not written in the Lamb's book of life, do have this tendency to worship that political beast, because they marvel at it, that it was, is not, and yet will be again, okay? People of the earth have long gone after empire. They've gone after power. They've gone after wealth. They've gone after resources. They've gone after power over their neighbor. And they will again, okay? That's the nature of the political beast. Okay. And then the angel keeps going. Verse 9, this calls for a mind of wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. So now this woman's riding, this false Christianity or false religion is riding upon this political beast, and it sits on 7 hills. Again, at the time of the writing of Revelation, for John and for the Christians being persecuted, y'all, that's very clear. Rome sits on 7 hills, okay? So this would have been the Roman Empire together with false religion, whether you're talking about the pagan religions, you're talking about following after Jupiter and Venus and all these deities, or you're talking about false Christianity in our own day. The two prop each other up, and so they, at some point, cannot be distinguished from one another. And again, it picks up on that sexual imagery. A man and a woman are married, they consummate that marriage, and they are said in Scripture to be one. They are one flesh. Paul's argument for for Christians holding to a different kind of morality. Early Christians were still going to prostitutes because men would regularly visit prostitutes in Roman culture. As these Gentiles, as Romans and Greeks and others converted and began following after Christ, Paul had to teach them, and we have the record of it in Scripture in the New Testament, Paul had to teach them to follow a new standard of purity because they were used to going to prostitutes as men coming from a Greco-Roman culture. And so Paul said, what did he say? He went back to Genesis. He said, the two will become one flesh. But you are already one with Christ through your baptism. So shall I take the body of Christ and unite that body with a prostitute? He said, never, right? As Christians, we now follow a brand new sexually pure standard. We don't do like the rest of the world does, okay? And that was his argument. You don't take the body of Christ and unite that body with a prostitute. You're united with Christ in baptism, so you cannot now continue to go visit prostitutes in your city. These two, the beast upon which the prostitute rides, are considered one in chapter 17, because when you've committed fornication with a prostitute, you are now one with her in flesh, okay? So here they're considered separately, but they're also considered one, okay? So verse 10, there are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen. One is, the other has not yet come, and when he does come, he must remain only a little while. Commentators have tried to figure out who these kings are, the 5, the 7, all that stuff. And I could go through all that with y'all, but it won't help us, so I'm not gonna, because it's just extra information to show you, ooh, look, I have extra information. I went to school and stuff, but that doesn't make me smarter, since obviously I can't seem to not mute my computer while y'all are talking. So I don't have any desire to try to make myself look smart today. We're just going to skip all the commentaries through the 6th century. What I will say is that it doesn't really matter who the kings are. They represent everything that we've talked about this entire study of Revelation. They represent the men, or in our own day, also women government leaders who occupy these positions of power and use them to create not only more power and wealth for themselves, but they use these positions to create like a cult of personality around themselves as well, okay? They do not live humbly before God. They do not serve humbly before God. They serve their own political gain and their own ends, okay? And I don't care what country you come from, and I don't care what empire you came from, and I don't care what political party you belong to. These people exist in every system, every political party, in every country on the face of planet Earth, okay? There are also those in governments who serve humbly and walk humbly before God. But there are plenty who don't. And you'll know them by their actions. You'll know them by their fruit, okay? So I don't have to lecture anybody about that. You'll know it when you see it, I promise. Let's see. At least I hope you'll know it when you see it. I'm praying for you that you know it when you see it. Let's see. And they will make war on the land. Now, what's interesting is this. Verse 15 and following. And the angel said to me, the waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. So all of that is subsumed in the Roman Empire at the time. But also all of that is subsumed in false religion. So again, the two are one. I mean, they prop each other up. And in the imagery here, the two are one. Whether you're talking about an empire that gobbles up peoples and nations and languages, or you're talking about false religion that gobbles up peoples and nations and languages, okay? But eventually, the kings of the earth and the peoples of the earth and these powers will actually devour the flesh of false religion. In other words, false religion is only as good to the state as long as it props up human oppressive systems, okay? And I got to stop there for a second because I want to make sure that we're not drifting into a new hermeneutic, which is a new way of reading Scripture. Sin is in the human heart, people. Sin is not in the institution. Sin is in the human heart. Sin is not in the human institution. The political beast is wicked not because sin is in the institution of government, but because people make up government and sin is in the human heart. The religious beast is not wicked because sin is in the institution of religion. Sin is in the human heart and people make up religion. So I tell people sometimes that your faith has to be strong enough to resist the world, which would be the political beast, all those oppressive things. But your faith also has to be strong enough to survive the institution of the church, because the church is made up of a bunch of sinners too. Okay? But I want to make sure that we're clear about something, especially because of all the activism that's going on today. I'm very, very concerned that Christians are going to be sucked up into a false reading of Scripture. Sin is not in an institution. Sin is in the human heart. Therefore, sin becomes manifest in institutions because people are sinners and they make up the institutions. Now, that seems like a difference, a distinction without a difference maybe, but it's not. Because Marxism is based upon the idea that sin is actually in the institution, not the human heart. So if you tear down the institutions and replace them with communism, that everybody will be happy and will live in a utopia. That has literally never worked once. A, because people don't want to be ants. At the end of the day, they don't want to be ants. And B, it doesn't work because sin was never in the institution itself, but rather in the human heart. It was on display in human institutions because institutions are made up of people who are sinners. So hopefully that helps to make sense a little bit. Marxist theory is tear down the institutions. I'm going to say it. Defund the police. Now, you can talk about funding and where funding ought to go, but guys and gals, be very, very careful. When people's political ideology has to do with tear down the system because the system is where the evil is, it's wrong-headed from the start. The evil is in people's hearts. I know people who wear clerical collars who are wicked, and they're in the institution of the church. That doesn't mean that I'm fixing to go out and tear the institution of the church down. Likewise, sin is on display in government, in religion, in whatever, because these institutions are made up of people and sin is in the human heart. But please be very, very careful that you understand that sin, from a biblical perspective, is in the human heart. Therefore, it's on display in human institutions and systems. Where that sin is on display, it can be called out, addressed, and hopefully corrected. And it needs to be called out. But the idea that sin is in the institution rather than the human heart is a very, very dangerous idea, and it is not biblical at all. And I hope I'm being clear about that. Okay? All right. So when the false religion no longer props up the political beast, it's useless to the political beast, and Revelation says the political beast will turn on false religion at the end of the day anyway. So by false religion making friends with the world, it's not going to end well for false Christianity, because when false Christianity makes friends with the world will eventually turn on false Christianity anyway. So you might as well stick with Jesus and learn how to be tough under persecution. I don't know another way to sum that up. We're out of time. I love you. Jesus loves you. hopefully, I'll see you here in a little bit at 11:15 on campus. If not, then you'll see me online, but I won't see you. And we will catch you next week, okay? Have a great week in the Lord.